In this chapter, second section, we're going to take a look at health as it relates to infrastructure. Now, it's important that you understand good health not only enhances the quality of life, but it means for the nation that if our population is healthy, they'll be able to contribute to GDP. And it's for that reason that we're very concerned about the health statistics of any given nation. With that said, let's take a look at some of the key healthcare statistics for India. First of all, the death rate in 1951 was 27.4 per 1,000. However, by 2013, it had fallen to 7 per 1,000. This is a very promising change. Secondly, infant mortality, that went from 146 births per 1,000 in 1951 all the way down to 40 per 1,000 in 2013. It should be mentioned that a country like Japan, where we are now, is far, far lower than this. The most recent statistics in Japan indicate that the infant mortality rate is 1.8, which means India still has a long way to go. Next, life expectancy, that has risen from 50 years of age until 67.5 years of age as of 2013. Then the next measure, the control over deadly diseases. There's no graph, but basically the textbook mentions that India has been able to get diseases like malaria, tuberculosis, cholera, and smallpox all under control, which is a very positive sign. And finally, child mortality has fallen from 57 per 1,000 in 1951 down to 15.2 per 1,000. And again, the statistics for Japan indicate that the child mortality rate is only at 2.7. I didn't go over it earlier, but the death rate and life expectancy as well have similar results for Japan in the sense that Japanese statistics are far more favorable than these. So India has a lot of work to do still in these areas. But if we look at the current state of infrastructure, we'll notice a whole bunch of data that shows India is moving in the right direction. The table on the right side demonstrates the graph that's displayed on the left side, and the graph on the left side is difficult to see because the scale is a little bit difficult to handle all the data at once. So we can see that there's been a significant increase in medical colleges, hospitals, CHCs, beds per 1,000 people, total doctors, total nurses, and total doctors per 1,000. All of these indicators are moving in the right direction. So does this mean that India has a perfect healthcare system? Well, unfortunately, no. As you probably are aware, the majority of the healthcare system is under the purview of the private sector. Now, in a country like America or a developed nation somewhere, that might not be a bad idea where individuals have disposable income left over to spend on healthcare. However, in India, as you know, the majority of the population is impoverished, and as a result, a lot of people are pushed out of access to healthcare. And this is one of the key factors that is mentioned as India's emerging challenge related to healthcare. The 6 key areas are, as earlier mentioned, unequal distribution of healthcare services, meaning poor have limited access, whereas the rich have almost unlimited access. Communicable diseases, which the textbook mentions as being under control, but this is a constant threat for India. Next, poor management. This is not limited to healthcare centers. Privatization, which is directly related to number 1. Poor upkeep and maintenance. Once the government invests in establishing a public hospital, they do very little in terms of upkeep and maintenance. And this is a big problem regarding public facilities in India. And finally, sanitation levels in the cities and the countries themselves are very poor. The sanitation level or plumbing or sewage systems are non-existent in some rural areas. So the way they dispose of waste is very, very problematic. And that further leads to diseases passing from one person to another. What is more surprising is that even in urban areas, 30% of all homes in India do not have toilet facilities, which means they use public facilities, and that brings them at a greater risk of catching some sort of communicable disease. So although we know improvements have been made in the infrastructure of India's healthcare system, they still have a long ways to go. Now, one little side point that is worth mentioning here is India has its own form of unique healthcare services. Basically, There are 5 mentioned in the textbook, and those are also a mainstay in the healthcare industry. They are Ayurvedic medicine, or based on Ayurveda, Yoga, Unani, Siddha, and Ayush. And the textbook doesn't mention them in any great detail, but it does mention that there are 3,000 hospitals, 24,000 dispensaries, and 64,000 beds that offer these types of healthcare services. So what's the takeaway here? Well, our energy needs are not being met, and our healthcare needs still have a long ways to go in terms of improvement. However, if we can improve our healthcare system and our energy supply, India's potential has yet to be maximized, and that's a very positive sign to draw foreign investment dollars into the country.